Good morning and good evening, friends. I want you to take a deep breath today and let this truth sink into your heart. God can be trusted completely, not partially, not sometimes, not when things are easy, but always, in all things, with all your heart. We live in a world filled with uncertainty. You turn on the news, chaos. You scroll through social media, fear. You look at your own life, maybe some confusion, anxiety, doubt. And yet, in the middle of all this noise, one promise stands unshaken. God is faithful, and He will never fail you. 1. Trust is a choice, not a feeling, let's be real. Trusting God doesn't always feel easy. Sometimes we think, God, where are you? I don't see you working. I don't feel peace. But let me tell you something important. Faith is not a feeling. Faith is a decision. Proverbs 3:5 says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Notice what it says. Don't lean on your understanding. That means even when life doesn't make sense, even when you can't see the way forward, you can still choose to trust God. Why? Because He sees what you can't. He knows what you don't, and He's working even when you don't feel it. 2. God's track record is perfect. Look back over your life. Think about all the times you thought it was over, when you thought you weren't going to make it. And yet, you're here, you survived heartbreak, you made it through the storm, you overcame that struggle, and it wasn't because you had it all figured out. It was because God carried you through. God has never failed you before, and He won't start now. The Bible says, The Lord is faithful to all His promises and loving toward all He has made. Psalm 145:13-3. Delays are not denials. One of the biggest reasons we stop trusting God is because we don't see immediate results. But hear this, a delay from God is not a denial. Sometimes God puts us in a waiting season not to punish us, but to prepare us. You're waiting for the breakthrough, the healing, the answer, but during the wait, God is building something in you: patience, strength, character, and deeper faith. Think about a seed in the ground. Just because you can't see it sprouting doesn't mean it's not growing. God is doing something in your life underground. Don't give up. 4. When you can't trace God's hand, trust His heart. You won't always understand what God is doing, but you can always trust who He is. God is not absent. God is not silent. God is not ignoring you. He sees your pain. He hears your cries. He knows your heart. The cross is proof that God's love is deeper than your pain, stronger than your doubt, and greater than your circumstances. Even if we are faithless, He remains faithful, for He cannot deny Himself. 2 Timothy 2:13. You may not feel strong enough right now. That's okay, because God is strong enough for both of you. 5. You can rest when you trust. Some of you are exhausted, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally. You're tired of trying to control everything, fix everything, carry everything. Let me give you this freedom today. You are not God. You don't have to have all the answers, you just have to surrender. When you trust God fully, you don't have to strive, stress, or panic. You can rest, cast all your cares on Him because He cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7. God is not going to drop you. He's not going to walk away from you. His hands are strong, His heart is kind, and His love is everlasting. Conclusion: He has never failed, and He never will. Whatever you're facing today, financial pressure, a health battle, a broken relationship, a silent season, let this be your declaration: I will trust God completely, because He will never fail me. He's not just the God of the mountaintop. He's the God of the valley. He's not just with you when it's easy. He's closest when it's hard. He's not just writing your story. He is the author and the finisher of your faith. So today, give Him your fears, lay down your doubts, let go of control. Because when you put your full trust in God, you'll discover peace the world can't offer and a strength you never knew you had. And remember, God will never ever fail you. Trust is a choice, not a feeling. That's a hard truth for many of us to accept, especially in a world that teaches us to be led by how we feel. But faith isn't about emotion. It's about decision. It's about making a deliberate and conscious commitment to believe that God is who He says He is, even when your emotions are pulling you in the opposite direction. You might wake up one day feeling anxious, uncertain, or even afraid, but that doesn't mean God has changed. It simply means your emotions are reacting to circumstances. Trust, however, is deeper than that. Trust doesn't rise and fall with your mood. It stands firm because it's rooted in the unchanging nature of God. There are moments in life when your feelings will betray you. They will tell you that you're alone, unloved, and forgotten. But God's Word says the exact opposite. He says you are never alone. He says you are loved with an everlasting love. He says He will never leave you nor forsake you. So when your heart feels heavy and your emotions are overwhelming, that's when trust becomes a conscious choice. You choose to say, God, I don't understand what you're doing, and I don't feel you right now, but I still trust you. This is where spiritual maturity begins to grow. It doesn't grow in the sunshine of easy days, but in the soil of uncertainty. When life throws questions that have no easy answers, that's when the roots of your faith dig deeper. Trust becomes the bridge between what you know in your spirit and what you don't yet see in your circumstances. You might be praying for a breakthrough and nothing changes. You might be asking God to open a door and it stays shut. You might be facing a battle that makes no sense. But choosing to trust means you've decided that God's character is more reliable than your current feelings. Feelings come and go. One minute you may feel strong, the next you feel like collapsing. But your decision to trust God is not based on those fluctuations. It's anchored in His promises, which never fail. Imagine standing in a storm. The wind howls, the rain beats down, and visibility is poor. That's what life feels like sometimes, but in that storm, your trust is the anchor holding you steady. You might sway, you might struggle, but you won't be swept away, because your trust isn't built on sand, it's built on a rock. The beauty of making trust a choice is that it activates your faith in the absence of clarity. It turns your eyes from what is seen to what is unseen. It shifts your focus from your problem to the one who holds the solution. You begin to walk by faith, not by sight. You begin to live beyond your emotions and live based on truth. And the truth is, God is trustworthy. He's never made a promise He didn't keep. He's never been late. He's never failed anyone who put their hope in Him. It's important to recognize that feelings often follow decisions, not the other way around. When you choose to trust God, even in fear, peace will eventually come. When you decide to place your confidence in Him, even in confusion, clarity will eventually follow. But it starts with that first step of trust, not because you feel like it, but because you've made the decision that God is worthy of your trust. Every time you make that choice, you silence the voice of fear. Every time you choose to trust, you reject the lie that you have to figure everything out on your own. You say to your soul, "Be still, God is in control." You won't always feel brave. You won't always feel hopeful. You won't always feel like praying or praising. But those are the exact moments when trust matters most. Because trust says, I believe even when I don't feel it. I follow even when I don't see the way. I hold on even when everything in me wants to let go. That is the kind of trust that pleases God. That is the kind of trust that unlocks His power in your life. It's a trust that doesn't rely on understanding, but on surrender. A trust that says, God, I choose you, not just when I feel good, but when I'm scared, when I'm weak, when I'm broken, I still choose you. God's track record is perfect. When you take a moment to look back over your life, you'll begin to see the pattern of God's faithfulness woven through every season, even in the moments you didn't understand it, even when you thought He was silent, even when you were walking through pain, confusion, or heartbreak. He was there. His presence never left you. His plan never failed. There may have been things you prayed for that didn't happen the way you wanted. But if you're honest, you can also see how some of the very things you feared or didn't understand turned out to be the stepping stones to greater strength, deeper faith, or a new beginning. God has a perfect history. From Genesis to Revelation, every page of the Bible testifies to a God who keeps his word. He promised Noah safety in the flood, and he delivered. He promised Abraham descendants when he was too old to father a child, and he provided. He promised Joseph promotion after betrayal, and he came through. These weren't just spiritual stories. They're evidence of a God who never fails, evidence of a God who specializes in making a way where there is no way. When you forget God's track record, you begin to panic. You start to believe the lie that maybe this time he won't show up, maybe this situation is too far gone, maybe the odds are too high, but faith is fueled by memory. When you remember how God healed you before, how he restored what was broken, how he turned your mourning into joy, your heart begins to find courage again. You realize that the God who brought you through the last storm is the same God who will carry you through this one. He hasn't changed, his power hasn't weakened, his love hasn't grown cold. Sometimes we treat God like he's on probation. We trust him for a little while, and if things don't go the way we expect, we start questioning his character. But God doesn't need to earn our trust. He's already proven himself again and again. If we kept a journal of every answered prayer, every time he made a way, every time we were protected from something we didn't even know was coming, we'd have pages full of reasons to trust him. What we see as coincidence is often just God's invisible hand at work. What we call delays are often divine setups. It's not just the big miracles that prove his track record. It's the daily mercies. The breath in your lungs, the roof over your head, the strength to make it through one more day. These are all signs that God is still sustaining you. He hasn't failed to show up even once. You may not always get what you ask for, but you will always get what is best for you in the long run. God is not in the business of failure. He's in the business of finishing what he starts. In moments of doubt, your best weapon is remembrance. Remind yourself of who he has been. Remind yourself of what he's already done. Remind yourself of the prayers he answered that you once thought were impossible. He's not only the God of yesterday's miracle, he's the God of today's promise, and if he was faithful then, he will be faithful now. His consistency is unmatched. His record is unblemished. No one else can claim that. So the next time fear starts to rise, let his faithfulness be your confidence. When the enemy whispers that you're going to lose, that it's over, that there's no way out, stand on the proof you already have. You don't need a new sign from heaven. You already have evidence. Look back. Look at your life. You didn't make it this far on your own. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was grace. It was God. It was his hand guiding, protecting, providing, lifting, and covering you through it all. Delays are not denials. This is a truth that every believer must hold close to their heart, especially in seasons of waiting. There are moments when you pray, fast, believe, and still, nothing seems to happen, the breakthrough doesn't come, the healing takes longer than expected, the door stays shut, and in that silence, doubt begins to creep in. You start wondering if God heard you, if he cares, or if maybe the answer is simply no. But a delay is not God saying no. Often it's him saying, not yet, not because he's forgotten you, but because he's preparing something greater than you imagined. In our human minds, we operate on limited timelines. We want things quickly, instantly, now, but God operates outside of time. He sees the full picture. While we see only a snapshot, he sees the entire story. And sometimes what looks like a delay is actually divine protection. It's God withholding something that would have hurt you if it came too early. It's Him setting things in motion behind the scenes, aligning people, timing, and circumstances so that when the moment comes, it will be perfect. Think of the story of Lazarus. Jesus heard that his friend was sick, but He didn't rush to his side. He waited, and in that waiting, Lazarus died. To everyone watching, it looked like Jesus was too late. But when He finally arrived, He raised Lazarus from the dead, something far more powerful than healing a sick man. What felt like a delay to everyone else was actually a setup for a greater miracle. Sometimes God allows things to die so He can resurrect them in a way that brings Him more glory. Delay stretches your faith. It purifies your motives. It teaches you to rely on God's presence more than His presence. When everything is going your way, it's easy to say, God is good. But when you're waiting in the dark, when your prayers seem unanswered, and you still declare, God is good. That's faith, that's trust, that's maturity. Waiting seasons are not wasted seasons. God is doing something in you before He does something for you. During the delay, God shapes your character. He teaches you patience, endurance, and humility. He deepens your trust in Him, because if the blessing came too soon, you might take credit for it. If the opportunity arrived before you were ready, it could crush you instead of bless you. God's delays are always intentional. They are filled with purpose. He is not punishing you. He is preparing you. Remember, some of the greatest heroes of faith had to wait. Abraham waited decades for the child God promised. Joseph endured years of slavery and prison before reaching the palace. David was anointed king as a boy, but didn't sit on the throne for many years. Jesus Himself waited 30 years before beginning His public ministry. If waiting was part of their journey, why should ours be different? The delay is also where intimacy with God is formed. It's in the quiet moments of questioning and hoping that you draw near to Him. It's where your prayer life grows deeper. It's where your worship becomes more real. You begin to seek God not just for what He can do, but for who He is. The delay strips away distractions and reveals the condition of your heart. So don't mistake God's silence for absence. Don't assume that just because something hasn't happened yet, it won't happen at all. God's timing is not just good, it's perfect. What feels like a long wait to you is right on schedule for Him, and when He moves, it will be worth every moment of waiting. You'll see that the delay was never about holding something from you. It was about preparing something greater for you. When you can't trace His hand, trust His heart. Life has a way of bringing us into seasons where nothing makes sense. You look around and everything feels confusing, uncertain, even painful. You pray and see no response. You ask for direction and hear only silence. You try to move forward, but the path seems hidden. It's in these moments that your faith is truly tested, not by how much you know, but by how deeply you trust. Trust is not about having all the answers. It's about resting in the assurance that even when you can't see what God is doing, His heart toward you is still good. There will be times when God's hand is invisible. You won't be able to see how He's working, what He's arranging, or where He's leading. The doors may seem closed. The opportunities may seem lost. But just because you can't trace His movements doesn't mean He's not moving. God is not idle. He's not passive. He's not confused. He's intentional in everything He does. What you call silence, He may be using to strengthen your inner life. What you call a delay, He may be using to build a foundation you can't even see yet. In the book of Job, we see a man who lost everything: his wealth, his health, his children. And for chapter after chapter, Job cries out to God with no answer in return. He didn't know that behind the scenes, God was still in control, still present, still writing a bigger story. Job couldn't trace God's hand in his pain, but in the end he discovered that God's heart had never changed. He realized that God was still for him, still worthy of worship, still sovereign over every moment. That's the same reality we must hold on to. God's heart is filled with love, mercy, wisdom, and faithfulness. He does not operate from a place of confusion. He does not change based on circumstances. His heart is consistent even when his ways are not immediately clear, and when life feels like it's unraveling, when your prayers go unanswered and your plans fall apart, the character of God becomes your anchor. You can trust that his motives are pure, his love is constant, and his purpose is still in motion. Sometimes God withholds clarity to draw us closer. If we always understood everything perfectly, we would begin to rely on knowledge instead of relationship. But when we walk through fog, we are forced to hold tightly to his hand. When the path disappears, we cling to his voice. When the light is dim, our ears become more attentive. In not knowing the next step, we become more aware of his presence. Trusting God's heart means believing that even when he says no, it's for your good. Even when he closes a door, it's for your protection. Even when he removes something you thought you needed, it's because he sees what you don't. His heart isn't focused on just your comfort, it's focused on your calling, your growth, and your eternal impact. That kind of love doesn't always feel easy, but it is always right. When you don't understand the process, remind yourself of his promises. When the hand of God is hidden, go back to what you know about his heart. He is faithful, he is just, he is kind, he is for you. He has not abandoned you, even if the path feels lonely. He is shaping you, refining you, and walking with you even in the silence. There will be seasons when you look around and wonder, where is God? But in those moments, let your heart whisper back, he's here. I know his heart, I know his love. The pain may be real, but so is his goodness. The confusion may be overwhelming, but so is his wisdom. The storm may be fierce, but so is his grip. You may not be able to trace the hand of God in this chapter of your life, but you can trust that his heart is still writing your story with grace, purpose, and unfailing love. You can rest when you trust. Trust brings a stillness to your soul that circumstances cannot shake. When you truly believe that God is in control, you stop striving to fix everything yourself. You stop losing sleep over things you can't change. You stop carrying burdens that were never meant to be yours. Rest is not just physical. Real rest is spiritual. It's knowing deep down that even when life feels chaotic, God's hands are steady. Even when the future is uncertain, his plans are sure. You don't have to understand everything to rest in his promises. When trust is absent, rest becomes impossible, worry takes over, anxiety sets in, you begin to replay every scenario in your mind, wondering how things will turn out. But trust invites you into a different space, a space where your heart can be quiet, where you can breathe again, where you're no longer driven by fear but anchored in faith. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing to see a greater reality. It's knowing that God sees the details you missed, knows the outcome before it begins, and is already working on your behalf. Think of a child in the arms of a loving parent. The child doesn't need to know where they're going or what's next. They just rest because they know they're safe. That's the kind of peace God offers, not a peace that comes from everything going your way, but a peace that holds you even when things don't. When you trust him fully, you don't have to force outcomes. You can do your part and leave the rest to him. Rest comes from surrender, not control. It's not weakness to let go, it's wisdom. It takes strength to say, God, I trust you enough to stop trying to control everything. That's where rest begins, in the letting go. In saying, I can't carry this, but I know you can, some of the greatest miracles happen not when we work harder, but when we rest deeper, because when we rest, we allow God to do what only he can. We make space for him to move. We stop trying to play God and start living like we believe in God. There's a supernatural calm that covers you when you choose to trust. It's not the absence of trouble, it's the presence of God in the trouble. You might still be walking through the fire, but you're not being consumed. You might still be in the storm, but your soul is anchored. That's what trust does. It brings stability in the middle of instability. It keeps you grounded when everything else feels like it's shifting. Rest is not passive, it's powerful. It declares to the world and to your own heart, God's got this. The reason you can rest is not because the situation is small, it's because God is big. He knows what you need, he's aware of the deadlines, the heartbreak, the pressure, and he hasn't forgotten you, so you can breathe. You can stop rehearsing worst case scenarios. You can stop trying to carry what only he can hold. The same God who created the universe holds your life together, and if he holds the stars in place, he can surely hold your future. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop panicking. It means you stop placing all the weight of the outcome on your own shoulders. It means you do what you can and leave what you can't in the hands of a God who never fails. Rest isn't laziness, it's alignment. It's choosing to walk in rhythm with God instead of running ahead in fear. Trusting God brings freedom, freedom from the lie that you're alone, freedom from the pressure to have it all figured out, freedom from the fear that things won't work out. Because even when you don't see it, God is working. Even when it's quiet, he is moving. And when you rest in that truth, your soul begins to heal, your heart begins to calm, and your mind begins to clear. You realize you don't have to fight every battle alone. You can rest because God is fighting for you. God's plan is always better than yours. This is a truth that doesn't always feel comfortable, but it is always necessary. We all have dreams, goals, and expectations for how life should go. We map out timelines, create strategies, and even pray for specific outcomes. But there comes a moment when things don't unfold the way we thought they would. When doors we were sure would open stay shut. When relationships we thought were forever fall apart. When jobs, plans, and opportunities vanish without warning. In those moments, it's easy to feel disappointed or even betrayed. But over time, if you keep walking with God, you begin to realize something powerful. What he gives is always better than what you planned. We often want what's comfortable, we want what's predictable and easy to control, but God wants what's transformational. He's not just concerned about your comfort, he's focused on your calling, and sometimes the very thing you think is a setback is actually a setup. What feels like a loss may be the path to something greater. What feels like a delay may be divine protection. He sees what you can't, he knows what you don't, and because of that, his plan will always outmatch anything you could have written for yourself. There's a reason Proverbs says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Our understanding is limited. We make decisions based on what we see right now, but God is not bound by time. He sees beginning to end, and he writes your story with eternity in mind. What you're praying for today, he may already be working out for a better tomorrow, one that includes growth, purpose, and fulfillment beyond your imagination. We think we know what's best for us, but if we're honest, how many times have we wanted something badly, only to realize later it would have taken us in the wrong direction? That relationship you cried over, that opportunity you lost, that door that slammed shut. If you had gotten your way, you might have missed what was truly meant for you. God's plan doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it always leads to what's best. He doesn't just want to give you what you ask for. He wants to give you what will actually bless you, and often his plan doesn't come all at once. It's revealed in steps. He gives you just enough light for the next step, not the whole path. That's not to frustrate you, it's to build your trust, because when you walk by faith, you stop relying on your own strength. You begin to lean into him, listen more closely, and follow more humbly. That's where real transformation happens, in the unknown, in the surrendered, in the yes. To something bigger than yourself, God's plan will stretch you. It will challenge your timelines, your comfort zones, and your expectations, but it will also lead you into peace, into purpose, into places you never thought possible. His ways are higher than yours, and his thoughts are beyond what you could imagine. What feels like uncertainty is often divine orchestration. Sometimes he takes you the long way around not to frustrate you, but to develop you, because what he's preparing for you is too great for the current version of you to carry. He has to grow you first, deepen your faith, refine your character, align your heart. When the time is right, everything will come together, not a moment too soon or too late. So trust that he's not wasting anything, not the tears, not the detours, not the disappointments. Everything has a purpose under his plan. And if you could see what he sees, you wouldn't want your plan, you'd want his. Because his plan not only blesses you, it shapes you, strengthens you, and leads you into the destiny you were created for.